We write the year 2024 and we only have 30 years left until Earth will blow up in 2054, so happy New Year's to you all. Yippee! 2023 included one of the most important and amazing entries to the Xenoblade franchise, Future Redeemed. It not only was the culmination of the 3 main Xenoblade games, it also left us with open questions and teasers about the future of the franchise. So we have to talk about what the future of Xenoblade could have in store for us with all the clues the games have left for us, and also by reading what Takahashi and team said in interviews. And I'm not only talking about the next big Xeno project, but also what could be happening in between. It is also very important to note that Switch 2 is definitely on the horizon. I fully believe the system will be announced this year, and if we are lucky, it could even be released later the same year. If you believe that it will happen this year or not doesn't actually matter, but what matters is that the developers are already planning ahead with Switch 2 in mind. And I also believe the Switch 2, whatever it might turn out to be, will be backwards compatible, so there would be no reason to re-release Xenoblade Definitive Edition 2 or 3 again. A remaster of Xenoblade 2 is actually one of my biggest hopes for the future. Even though it is still my favorite game in the franchise, it is obviously in a very rough state because of the short development time they were given. A rework of the tutorials and field skills, as well as other minor quality of life improvements, would go a long way for the game, but I don't really think it's time for that yet, sadly. No, we actually have other multiple possible scenarios that are way more plausible. For this, we only have to listen what Takahashi himself already teased in a message to fans when Xenoblade 3 released. Quote, "This title depicts the conclusion of the Xenoblade story that began with Klaus's experiment. While it is a conclusion, that does not mean it is the end of the Xenoblade series. It is just a stopping point in my mind. I think that everyone who played the title and additional stories in the expansion pass can imagine what lies in the future for Xenoblade." End quote. So after we did play Future Connected, we indeed have clues on what could be next. A certain radio holds all the secrets to that answer. Another point to make is that Xenoblade 3 only released 2 years ago and Future Redeemed was last year. I don't think we are getting Xenoblade 4 anytime soon, but there are many options to fill the gap until 2026 and beyond. So let's split the future predictions up in 3 possible routes that I think make the most sense. Also, one prediction doesn't exclude the other ones from happening. I think everything will be done in due time, but I want to try to predict what is more likely to happen sooner than later. So before we hop into the first route, a very quick reminder, very quick. Leave a like. Also subscribe. Thank you very much. The Xenosaga route. For most fans, this is the most plausible route the future of Xenoblade will take. The radio in Future Redeemed dropped some major bombshells on us and unequivocally connected the Xenosaga story to the Xenoblade events. In the radio, we can hear a news broadcast talk about current events that are happening at the time before Klaus pressed the button and started the experiment. These are not Easter eggs, but rather story expositions. In this broadcast, we hear about someone named Dmitry Yuriev who is working for the Saviorites. While Saviorites was mistranslated in Saga as Salvators, the Japanese name is consistent among the games, and Dmitry Yuriev is straight up the same guy that is important to the Xenosaga games. We also get to see the radio itself as a product of Vector Industries that are also heavily tied to the Xenosaga lore. And if we dig a bit deeper, we can actually see how one of the most important plotlines in Xenosaga, that was the disappearance of Earth that was dubbed as Lost Jerusalem, is actually retroactively explained by the events of Xenoblade. Earth was split into 2 different pocket dimensions and disappeared from the original universe, only to reappear at the end of Xenoblade 3 after multiple thousands of years. Yes, Monolith Soft and Nintendo made the effort to acquire the rights to the Xenosaga stuff from Bandai Namco, and they are now even listed in the credits and in the intellectual property section. So how does this tell us about the future of Xenoblade when they just tied 3 old games to the lore? Well, spoilers for the Xenosaga 3 ending, we actually see Cosmos falling towards Lost Jerusalem, Earth, at the end of the game, and we also see something falling towards the Earth at the end of Future Redeemed. This could very well mean that Xenoblade 4, or whatever it will be called, could continue this plot thread. Now with the game implications out of the way, what does it actually mean for the Xeno games in the future? You see, Xenosaga came out throughout 2002 to 2006 on the PlayStation 2. It is a very difficult series to get your hands on at this point. What's even crazier is that 2 of the 3 games were never even released in Europe to begin with. And now these games have important story beats to a successful franchise. We need now more than ever a re-release on modern platforms, or even better, a remake/remaster for the Switch. Even though most of the plot adds nicely to Xenoblade, there are a few retcons that must be addressed, and a remaster would be a perfect way to do so. I personally don't believe they would go the extra effort to rework the games in a crazy meaningful way, but I would really hope they adapt the same art style for all 3 releases this time around, and also add a ton of quality of life improvements to the games. Package this with the Japan exclusive Pied Piper mobile game that has been lost in time in a neat little Xenosaga Trilogy remaster, and we would be golden. I full-heartedly believe we are getting there. Only recently in December, Bandai Namco announced the Xenosaga collaboration with a Japanese mobile game called Tales of Raise out of nowhere. And Nintendo already showed that they are also not against the idea of collaborating with them, as seen in Xenoblade 3. The Xenosaga name is now back in action, and the possibility of a Xenosaga remake this year is more than possible. Now let's talk about the second option. As I already said, one doesn't exclude the other one from happening, and the radio we mentioned in the Xenosaga section holds not 1, but 2 bombshells for us. Next to dropping the huge Xenosaga implications, they also referenced Xenoblade X word for word. The terms Coalition Government and Earth-Life Colonization Project Exodus are very specific terms that were only mentioned in Xenoblade X. Especially the term Project Exodus is very important because this is a localization exclusive term they added for the Western release. In Japan, the Earth-Life Colonization Project Exodus is simply called the Global Species Pan-Immigration Plan. This is important because the exact same term is used both in Xenoblade X and Future Redeemed when you play in Japanese. And more importantly, they used the same changed localization term Project Exodus for both Xenoblade X and Future Redeemed as well. This means this was a conscious reference to the exact same events in Xenoblade X and doesn't refer to a completely different, unrelated project. Remember, this was the same radio conversation that dropped important lore information about Xenosaga that ties everything together. These are not only little Easter eggs, but a view at an actual news broadcast on Earth before Klaus started the experiment. If there are people still out there doubting that X has a future and that Takahashi just made a spin-off with no connection whatsoever, even after Future Redeemed connected Blade to Saga intentionally, then I want to show you this message from Takahashi that Nintendo posted before Xenoblade 3 even released. Quote, "The key visual features a broken great sword of Mechonis and the body of the Urian Titan with a big gaping hole. I imagine everyone who saw the trailer was quite surprised by the final scene." What is this visual hinting at? I can't reveal that. What I can tell you is that this visual was conceived quite some time ago. More precisely speaking, we came up with it sometime between the end of Xenoblade Chronicles and the beginning of development of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. End quote. You know what else happened between the end of Xenoblade Wii and Xenoblade 2? Xenoblade X. Do you really think the man who planned the title screen for Xenoblade 3 in advance before he even started development on 2 and was working on Xenoblade X at the same time, the man who had a master plan to connect all the Blade games to Saga for a long time, that this man made X as the only spin-off to the series? I think we have to let the man cook. Astute Xenoblade X players will now realize that something doesn't really add up with the plot of Xenoblade X that the game itself presents to us from the beginning of the game. I won't go into details here, but I already made a video on this topic a while ago that you can check out after this. The small TLDR is that you can't 100% trust what Xenoblade X tells you, because the government lied from the start about major important plot points regarding Project Exodus and its purpose. There's way more to it, and I do want to make a follow-up video to discuss all possible directions the follow-up to Xenoblade X could take, so if you're interested, let me know. Thing is, as it stands right now, Xenoblade X leaves way too many plot holes open and literally ends with even more questions than answers. Plus, it is also one of the few remaining Wii U exclusive games that were never ported to the Switch. With the low sales of the Wii U and how hard it is to get your hands on one, it is more than important to bring this game to the Switch, or Switch 2 for that matter. It would be the perfect opportunity to add and retcon the context back into what actually happens in Xenoblade X and how Mira connects to everything. We have an interview with Takahashi from 2017 already stating that he would like to see Xenoblade X on Switch if the demand is high enough and if it fits his future plans. I also think X could benefit a lot from the Switch 2 release. Even though this is a Wii U game, it does need additional downloads saved on your console to even run in a good state. It's a massive game that can only benefit from more processing power that the Switch 2 will bring along. I can actually see two possible future plans for X happening. They could kinda make Xenoblade X Definitive Edition that brings the game with some quality of life improvements to the Switch and also adds one more continent and a few extra chapters to finally round the game up. This could recontextualize a lot of plot holes and also answer long awaited questions that the X community has been dying on since the release in 2015. If this really is their plan though, I think we won't be seeing this until 2025 or later. Plan 2 on the other hand would be to just straight up port X to the Switch/Switch 2 with little effort and release it in 2024. Then focus on continuing the X plotline in a fully fledged sequel that we would only probably see in 2027. Now let's talk about Route 3. We still can get Xenosaga Trilogy HD in 2024, Xenoblade X HD in 2025, and then release a brand new Xeno game in 2026/2027 that binds everything together, but in a different way. What do I mean by binding everything together? Well, Takahashi's interview revealed that Xenoblade 3 marks a stopping point for the series. The Cloud Saga is over. The Xenosaga is over. It is time for something new to take its place. A lot of people think the Xenoblade name is too big to ditch it, but I think using Xeno and combining it with something else is still recognizable enough and connections to the series can be made. Something like Xenospear, Xenolance, Xenoverse. Oh, we can't use that one, but you get the idea. I also think something like Xenoblade Saga could work perfectly fine as a new naming convention, and all this would follow the trend that Takahashi already was doing with his other titles, even though these were because of licensing. This could be a new saga, and if we go with the idea that the new games would be something entirely new, they could do the same thing as before and throw us into a completely new separate plotline that stretches over 3 games and only connects to the other sagas by slowly revealing the deeper connections. I think this method of storytelling served them very well to get new players interested in their new games without giving them the fear of having to catch up with tons of old games that would potentially make the experience better. Whatever the future of Monolith Soft is, I know for sure that it's going to be bright. It has been one, if not the best asset for Nintendo for years now, and the studio increased a ton of profits over the years. We have been getting constantly fed by them every single year with figurine releases, Smash inclusions, amiibo, soundtrack releases, games and DLC. There really hasn't been a year of drought since 2017, and it shows, because after Breath of the Wild and before Tears of the Kingdom released, we got Xenoblade 2, Torna, Xenoblade Definitive Edition, Xenoblade 3 and Future Redeemed. Just think about that. And whatever it is that Monolith Soft makes next, I will be here. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you to subscribe for more Xenoblade stuff, or else you're gonna miss it. Subscribe, okay? Do it for Nia.